Hello and welcome to this Tennis Asia TV rundown of the US Open qualifying for the men's singles. Um, it's going to be an interesting one because quite a few players, I would say, there's a few interesting players that are maybe hoping to make the US Open for the first time. And then there's a few guys who have been there before but are hoping to make it back for the first time in a while. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who's going to make it through. But I'm going to highlight some of the players I think have a really good chance or a decent chance of making it through to the US Open main draw. And first up, I'm going to have to look up, I'm going to get it up in front of you, the draw. Okay, and you can see there, we've got it on the Wikipedia. Okay, first up, if you can see in that first section, Taro Daniel's in there. Unfortunately, not particularly hopeful for his chances to get through there. Obviously, Arthur Cazot is the top seed there, Mark Lyall and Leonard Strupp. It's going to be difficult. The first player, though, I'd like to focus on is Wu Yibing of China. There is no doubt this guy's talent. He has had a lot of trouble getting, being able to play regularly due to injuries, various issues. However, he has been back and been playing pretty regularly, and he's looked very good when he has been able to perform, particularly at the challenger level. And there's no doubt that he's got the talent and probably should really be a guy that's being, playing in the top 100, playing in the top 50 even. And he's started off with a really decent draw, although he's drawn a seed. He will play Juan Pablo Fekovic, who I think he will have a good chance against, and I do expect him to get through. Having said that, second round he will face Dusan Lajovic or Luka van Asch, and certainly it could have been an easier draw than that, considering that they're both unseeded. Also looking ahead, you've just got Michael Zheng, the American wildcard there, who's fresh off a challenger win in Chicago. So, yeah, and you can see Yasutaka Uchiyama there, the Japanese veteran. I'm not sure that he's showing so much form at the moment that I would expect him to get through. But Wu Yibing is definitely the man to watch in this section. And, he's obviously played in the US Open before. He's one that I think a lot of people would definitely be looking out to see again in the main draw. And certainly one that if he was able to make it through, would actually have the potential to cause an upset against some of the bigger names because he is that talented. When he played Carlos Alcaraz in Shanghai last year, he took him to the first set tiebreak, and it was really some spectacular tennis. Of course, Carlos got it done in the end, but that was a match in which Alcaraz, by his own admission, said he felt like he was being dominated at times and in a way that he wasn't used to. So that is, the respect that he showed to Wu Yibing there. And so definitely one to watch out for. Moving down the draw, we've got Yuta Shimizu and Sho Shimabukuro. So they're in that section, as is the Lebanese representative, Benjamin Hassan. Certainly think this section is fairly wide open. We've got Juan Manuel Cerundolo. Either of those two Japanese players could, possibly make it through to the final round, but this section is wide open. But the next person, our next player I'd like to focus on is where you can see Beibut Zhukayev there, the Kazakh representative there. But the next player I'd like to focus on is, as we move further down, is Xu Yushou, who is from Taiwan, and he represents Chinese Taipei. But he's drawn against Passaro in the first round, the 10th seed. And although Xu is, not seeded himself, don't think it's the worst draw for him. He's certainly a player that's also been in very good form of late. He's done very well on the ITF circuit, winning a 125 or coming runner-up in a few there. And then most recently was runner-up at the Chicago Challenger. And he starts off against against Passaro. Xu likes these conditions. I do think if he does get through that first round, he has a good chance to go all the way and make it through to the US Open main draw. He has been in the main draw of the US Open before, back in 2023 when he reached the second round. In that particular case, he got past Thanasi Kokkinakis before losing in straight sets, although a decent effort against Cameron Norrie. So he has been there before. So he, I think with the way he's playing, he does have an opportunity to make it through to the final round. He got pretty good all-round baseline game, and good, decent athlete. Not the biggest player, but he is a player that on his days are going to be a handful for most of these guys. So yeah, moving down, another player I'd like to watch out for is Rei Sakamoto, this young Japanese talent, Samurai Sakamoto. He has that nickname because he actually performs what is known as a samurai celebration, where he draws the sword, like a samurai, or not an actual sword. He performs the action, mimicking that. But so for Sakamoto, very talented player. He's already won 2 challenger titles, and he's still so young. A guy who came through from IMG Academy. He's about 200 in the world, still 19, but no doubting his talent. He's drawn against one of the wild card players, Tyler Zink. Yeah, I mean, it's not always easy playing an American player on American soil, especially at the US Open. But I do think it's one that she'll be able to navigate. Having said that, Sakamoto has a great chance to make it through to the final round here. But there's a lot of talent there in that particular section. Alexander Blocks, most notably, he's the 11th seed, top seed in that section, just outside the top 100. And I think deservedly so. I mean, he's also a player who has won 2 challenger titles himself, and most recently finished runner-up at the Winnipeg Challenger. He is slightly older than the Rei Sakamoto, but Sakamoto, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Sakamoto facing off against Alexander Blocks in that final round. And then, that's going to be a pretty competitive one. But Rei, if he was to make it through, I think he has a chance of exciting a lot of the fans in New York. Whoever he's drawn against in that first round, it's going to be interesting. A guy who's, he's got a big personality. He's very expressive. So, yeah, he's definitely an interesting character and a great tennis player. And I think one you should be looking out for. Further down, we've got next another Japanese player, another fairly young player, Shintaro Mochizuki, former Wimbledon junior champion. I think that was 2019. He was the boys champion. Shintaro now is no longer a boy, really. He's 22, still young, just outside the top 100 there. And you could say playing some of the best tennis of his career. Yuri Rodionov is who he draws in that first round. So it's not an easy first round for him. But as I say, these qualification events, they're very competitive. And, probably Mochizuki I would favor against Rodionov, but you never know. As I say, in these events, I mean, it's so competitive, and it's so big for these players. The money in offer, even just for these qualifying rounds, they get a lot of money. I mean, more than a lot of them would get on playing challenges or ITF events, and even winning them. And then, of course, if they make the main draw, they get a huge amount of money. So, yeah, this is obviously a hugely important event for these guys. And I don't think it's the strongest section there, but so I think Shintaro has a great opportunity to make it through to the main draw. So we'll see what happens. And I definitely think, though, he's got an interesting style that, he likes to be, because he's not the biggest player himself. So he has to be, play a smarter game, a kind of aggressive game, and try and play quickly, come to the net when he can. And, which is why, that his style works well on the grass. But I definitely think he's got an opportunity to make it through here. Moving down, another player who is another Japanese player, more experienced Japanese player this time, is 27-year-old Yosuke Watanuki, who has played in the US Open before. He qualified back in 2023 as well. And he actually lost the first round to Adrian Manarino in 4 sets. But he's definitely a player that loves the hard courts. And unfortunately for him, though, he's drawn against Christian Garin in the first round. That's definitely a tough one, first off. I mean, he would have been hoping maybe for something a bit easier. but it's more or less a toss up. And nonetheless, I do think Yosuke, the way he's played since he's come back, because he's also another player that's had injuries. He plays quite an attacking, aggressive style, and an exciting one when his game is on. In terms of how he's done so far, in this American hardcourt season, it's not been particularly good, I would say. I mean, he won, match in Granby Challenger. He won a match in the qualies for Washington. He did get through and qualify for the main draw at the Rogers Cup in Canada in Toronto. And he did actually beat Daniel Altmaier in the first round, but then lost out from a set up to Francis Tiafoe eventually in a tiebreak. And then subsequently in Cincinnati, he lost pretty heavily to the Czech player, Dalibor Sivacina, 6-2, 6-love. So, yeah, he's a bit of a mixed bag there, I would say, in the hard courts, but there's no doubt when he's on that he can cause trouble. Then he'd have to play potentially Christopher Eubanks in the second round. Of course, Eubanks has his own unique style, obviously, tall player, and it's maybe going to be difficult to face him on the hard courts of New York as an American. Yannick Hanfrom is also in that section. So, yeah, it's not the easiest, but Yosuke is definitely a player. If he was to make it through again, he's a player who has the potential to excite the fans. And even if he doesn't win that first round, he will, make it exciting, probably. Moving down the draw, we can see a few more Asian players, Ryo Noguchi and Hedi Habib. Certainly, Hedi has made history earlier in the year at the Australian Open qualifying. As a Lebanese player, he did really well to do that. And then Jaime Faria, though, is also there in that section, which makes it quite tricky. Thiago Seyboth-Field and Dmitry Popko as well in that section. So Popko, of course, representing Kazakhstan. But the two players I'd like to focus on the last section there, the 16th section, are Coleman Wong of Hong Kong and James Trotter, who represents Japan. We also have another Asian representative in Mikhail Kukushkin of Kazakhstan, the veteran. However, I think the players who have more chance to make it through are Wong and Trotter. Coleman Wong, he's a player that he actually did pretty well in the challengers. He's only 21 still, and he's reached 4 challenger finals, but that came mostly, earlier on in his career, in 2023 and 2024. For the last year or so, he hasn't had too many great results, and which has found himself hovering within, between 100 and 200 in the world. So, yeah, he still hasn't qualified yet for the US Open or any of the majors, but so he's looking to do that for the first time. He has done okay in some of the, the Masters events. I mean, he beat Ben Shelton in Miami. Yeah, so Coleman Wong, he got through qualifying in Cincinnati as well. Straight sets against Sarundalo Mochizuki in the qualies, and then in the first round he beat Giovanni Pesci Pericard 6-3, 6-2 before falling to Umber in straight sets 6-3, 6-4. So that's some pretty good results there for him. But then he lost in the second round to Arthur Cazot in the Cancun Challenger. But obviously some of the results this year, it's been, let's say, some good results and some not good results. But, the hard courts are where he is comfortable. He's going to be motivated. I think if he gets through that first round, I could definitely see him getting through to the final qualifying round. And then, who knows? I do think it's quite well open. James Trotter as well, who is 26, a bit older than Coleman is. He came through also US college system. He played college with Ohio State and won the Division I title there. He's done very well in the challengers because, he has won a couple of challengers. Tyler and Charlottesville challengers last year, finished runner-up in Columbus. So he's got, a player with style where he likes to, serve pretty big and come to the net, plays quite aggressive. So, yeah, I think he is a player who, he can definitely has the ability at the moment to be able to get through to that final round. As I say, his North American season, though, at the moment hasn't been, particularly brilliant. He did get to the quarters in Granby, lost in qualies in Canada at the Masters, and then at Cincinnati, the qualies match there, and only won one match at the Sumter Challenger, which is the last tournament before this. He plays against Billy Harris. I think with the way Harris has not been particularly good at the moment, so I do see that Trotter be able to get through this one. And if Wong and Trotter were to face off in the final qualifying round, that wouldn't be so surprising, and it'd be a match that we'd be accustomed to seeing on the Challenger Tour. It's going to be interesting. I think those players definitely have a chance, and of course, if either of them were to do it, they'd be making it through to a major for the first time, and that's obviously exciting for them. But to round it off, I think we have to go with probably the best chance of making it through, although it is a tough section, I have to say, is Wu Yibing, but I do think he's still the best player in that section. And then probably the next highest chance of making it through, we'll probably have to go with, who would I say? I'm thinking Shu Yu Shou has a great chance to maybe get back in there. I just think his section is not particularly tough. And he has the ability to do well here. And perhaps Rei Sakamoto, although it's potentially has to get through Alexander Blocks, which is going to be very tricky. But that basically rounds off the preview of the men's singles qualifying draw at the US Open this year. And it's going to be interesting to see who makes it through. And hopefully, if we get some good matchups, maybe in that final qualifying round, we would do a live watch along for one of the matches there. But thanks for watching this preview, and I hope to see you soon.